I always helped my younger sister Sarah financially. After our parents died, I stepped up as her protector. When Sarah got engaged to Tyler, I continued supporting them through tough times, paying their rent, medical bills, and lending money for emergencies. One evening at dinner, after months of increasing financial demands, something shocking happened. Sarah and Tyler laughed in my face about how they had been taking advantage of me all along. Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if family betrayal stories resonate with you. Being the eldest child in my family always came with responsibilities, but after our parents passed away, those duties multiplied overnight. I am Jerry now, 32 years old, working as a senior software engineer at a rapidly growing tech company in Seattle. My journey to this position was not easy, starting as an entry-level programmer straight out of college and working relentlessly to climb the corporate ladder. I make good money now, live in a comfortable two-bedroom apartment downtown, and have managed to build a healthy savings account over the years. But more than financial security, I value family above everything else. This perspective on family was deeply ingrained by our parents, but it became almost sacred after they died in that terrible car accident 9 years ago. I was 23, then already working and independent. Sarah, my little sister, was only 18, about to start college with dreams and plans our parents would never see fulfilled. In that moment of shared grief, I made a silent promise to them that I would look after Sarah just as they would have. The early days after the funeral were the hardest. Sarah would call me in the middle of the night, sobbing uncontrollably. I would drive across town at 3 in the morning just to sit with her until she fell asleep again. When she started college, I paid half her tuition to ensure she would not be burdened with excessive student loans. We established a weekly dinner tradition, sometimes at my place, sometimes at her dorm cafeteria. These dinners became our anchor, the one constant in our lives, as we navigated our new reality without parents. Those initial years strengthened our bond. Sarah would tell me everything from her struggles with calculus to her first serious boyfriend. I became not just a brother, but a confidant, a mentor, and sometimes, when necessary, a parent figure who could offer both support and guidance. The boundaries were clear, though. I wanted Sarah to grow independent and strong, capable of making her own decisions while knowing she always had me as her safety net. Things began to change when Sarah met Tyler during her junior year of college. They were in the same marketing class, she told me excitedly during our weekly dinner. Tyler was charming, ambitious, and attentive in ways that made Sarah feel special. After dating for 2 years, they announced their engagement. I was genuinely happy for them. At the engagement party, I gave a heartfelt speech welcoming Tyler into our small but tight-knit family. I remember raising my glass to toast their future, feeling optimistic about Sarah finding a partner who seemed to adore her as much as she deserved. The first warning sign appeared about 3 months after their engagement. Tyler lost his job at the marketing firm where he had been working since graduation. He explained it away as a toxic work environment with a boss who did not appreciate his innovative ideas and creative approach. It sounded reasonable enough. Companies and employees do not always align in their visions. Sarah stood firmly by his side, confident that with his qualifications he would find a better position in no time. That was when the financial requests started. It was a Tuesday evening when Sarah called, her voice breaking, as she explained that they could not make rent that month. Tyler was still job hunting, and her part-time teaching assistant position barely covered groceries. Without hesitation, I transferred $1,800 to her account, calling it an engagement gift so she would not feel embarrassed. The relief in her voice was all the thanks I needed. 2 weeks later, Sarah came down with severe bronchitis that required medical attention. Their insurance had lapsed with Tyler's job loss, so I paid the doctor's bills and prescriptions. Shortly after, Tyler's car broke down during a critical interview day. Again, I stepped in, covering the repair costs. Each situation seemed legitimate, each need genuine. I never questioned helping, because that is what family does right. We support each other through tough times, no questions asked. Looking back now, I can pinpoint when subtle changes began in our relationship. Sarah's calls became less frequent unless they involved some financial need. Our weekly dinners, once filled with laughter and updates about life, became brief meetings, often dominated by their financial struggles. Tyler began making comments that made me uncomfortable. Things like, "As the successful one in the family, You have an obligation to help those still climbing the ladder. Sarah mentioned that Tyler felt resentful about having to ask for handouts. This confused me. I never saw my support as handouts, but as family, helping family. Still, to preserve peace, I started offering help before they asked, hoping to spare Tyler's pride. In retrospect, this only accelerated the problem. The gratitude that had once been abundant in their voices diminished with each interaction, replaced by an expectation that bordered on entitlement. The financial requests not only continued but increased in both frequency and amount. One evening, Sarah called with tears in her voice, explaining that they had accumulated $5,000 in credit card debt just trying to cover groceries and basic necessities. Without much deliberation, I paid it off, telling myself it would give them a fresh start. When they decided to move to a nicer apartment, I covered the security deposit and first month's rent another $3,400. The apartment was significantly more expensive than their previous one, but Tyler insisted it was in a better area for networking with potential employers. Then came the emergency dental surgery. Sarah called almost unintelligible through her pain, explaining that she needed $2,000 for a procedure that insurance classified as cosmetic rather than medically necessary. I transferred the money, immediately concerned, only with relieving her suffering. It was 3 days later, while scrolling through social media, that I saw their pictures from a weekend trip to Las Vegas posted the very day after her supposed emergency surgery. They were smiling broadly at a high-end restaurant, cocktails in hand. I zoomed in on the photo, looking for any signs of dental discomfort in Sarah's smile, but found none. My confusion deepened when mutual friends mentioned in passing that Tyler had purchased the latest gaming system and some designer clothes. These were not extravagant luxuries on their own, but for someone claiming unemployment and financial distress, they were puzzling choices. I filed these observations away, not yet ready to confront what they might mean. During our next Sunday dinner, I gently tried to broach the subject of their spending habits. "I noticed you guys went to Vegas last weekend," I said, trying to keep my tone light and curious rather than accusatory. "How did you manage that with things being so tight financially?" The reaction was immediate and defensive. Sarah's face flushed as she accused me of monitoring her life too closely. "We needed a break from all the stress," she snapped. "Is that a crime?" Tyler jumped in, his voice carrying an edge I had never heard before. "You do not understand our struggle, Jerry. You have always had it easy with your fancy tech job and privilege. Sometimes you need to invest in your mental health even when times are tough." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she added the finishing blow. "If you really loved me, you would not question how we use your help. Real family supports unconditionally." The manipulation was obvious now, but at the time it worked perfectly. I backed down immediately, apologizing for overstepping, and even offered to help them create a budget that would allow for both necessities and occasional luxuries. The real eye-opener came a week later when my friend Jackson invited me over for a drink after work. With obvious discomfort, he revealed that Tyler had been bragging during their poker night about how he was playing me. According to Jackson, Tyler had described in detail how easy it was to get money from me with a sad story, and by using Sarah as the messenger, I sat there beer warming in my hand, as Jackson reluctantly shared what he had heard. My stomach turned with each new detail. This revelation coincided with other troubling patterns. Sarah had been telling extended family members that I was becoming controlling with my financial help, painting herself as a victim of my supposed power trip. Even more hurtful was the day I arrived early at their apartment to drop off some groceries I had picked up, overhearing Tyler on the phone, describing me as their personal ATM while laughing with whoever was on the other end of the roses line. Their behavior changed too. They began showing up unannounced at my apartment whenever they needed something, often with a rehearsed story ready. I started feeling anxious whenever I saw their names pop up on my phone, knowing another request was likely coming. Despite this growing unease, I continued helping them. The alternative meant accepting that my sister was actively participating in manipulating me, a truth too painful to confront. The financial demands escalated dramatically when Tyler lost another job after just 2 months. This time, he blamed incompetent management that failed to recognize his potential. Within days of this news, Sarah quit her part-time job, explaining that Tyler needed her emotional support during his job search. Their combined income, now zero, They turned to me with increasing frequency. They asked me to co-sign for a new car because, as Tyler put it, he needed reliable transportation to make a good impression at interviews. Though hesitant, I agreed, telling myself it was an investment in their future employment prospects. The $15,000 loan request for Tyler to start his entrepreneurial dream business was harder to swallow. He presented a vague business plan for a marketing consultancy, promising it would be their pathway to financial independence and the end of needing my help. The plan had obvious holes, but Sarah's pleading eyes and reminders of how our parents would have wanted the family to stick together eventually wore down my resistance. Looking back, I can see how each request pushed the boundary a little further, testing how much I would give before pushing back. Like the proverbial frog in slowly heating water, I did not realize how untenable the situation had become until I was already cooked. Everything came to a head on a Friday night, when I invited them over for dinner. I had spent the afternoon preparing Sarah's favorite meal, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, creating what I hoped would be a supportive atmosphere for a difficult conversation. I had finally reached my limit and planned to discuss a path toward financial independence for them, complete with a timeline and specific milestones. They arrived 40 minutes late, both visibly intoxicated from what they casually mentioned were pre-dinner drinks at a nearby bar. Sarah's speech was slightly slurred as she hugged me while Tyler headed straight for my liquor cabinet to pour himself another drink without asking. The careful script I had prepared in my head began to unravel before we even sat down to eat. We made it through the meal with superficial conversation, though I noticed they barely commented on the food I had spent hours preparing. As I served coffee and dessert, I carefully broached the subject I had invited them over to discuss. "I wanted to talk about your financial situation," I began cautiously. "I know things have been tough, but I think we need a plan for moving forward that leads to more independence for you both." Before I could continue, Tyler interrupted with their latest request. They wanted $30,000 for a down payment on a house. The amount stunned me into momentary silence. It was substantially more than anything they had asked for previously. "The market is hot right now," Tyler explained as if discussing a minor purchase. "We need to get in now before prices climb even higher." Finding my voice, I expressed concern about the timing. "Are you sure buying a house is the right move when neither of you has stable income? Maybe we should focus first on employment and building some savings of your own." That was when it happened. Tyler snorted with laughter, an abrupt, derisive sound that cut through the room. "Man, you are still on about that responsibility stuff," he said, shaking his head in amusement. Sarah giggled beside him, her eyes meeting his in shared hilarity. "He still thinks we are actually trying to be responsible," she said, her voice carrying none of the warmth I was accustomed to from my sister. My confusion must have been evident because Tyler's amusement only grew. Jerry, he said in a condescending tone. "You make it so easy. Just mention family duty and open the checkbook right." Sarah joined in, mockingly imitating my voice. "I am worried about you guys, but here is the money anyway. Let me know if you need anything else." Her impression was cruel, exaggerating my concern into something pathetic and laughable. As I sat frozen in disbelief, they continued their revelations, seemingly unaware of or indifferent to my growing shock. Tyler casually mentioned how they had been manipulating me for years. "The best one was that dental emergency," he chuckled. "We had already booked Vegas before she even called you." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "And that car repair, we used most of that money for our anniversary dinner at Canlis." She referred to one of the most expensive restaurants in Seattle. The confessions continued like a dam breaking. Tyler boasted about selling items I had bought them on eBay for extra cash, while Sarah revealed they had a running joke with friends about me being their golden goose. "Remember when you offered to help with budgeting?" Tyler asked Sarah, barely containing his mirth, as if we would let him see where his money actually goes. My body felt disconnected as I listened, heart racing, but mind oddly calm, processing this betrayal in slow motion. After several minutes of their laughter and continued confessions, I quietly asked, "So you have been deliberately manipulating me this entire time?" Something in my tone finally penetrated their amusement. Sarah glanced at me, perhaps seeing for the first time the depth of pain in my expression, but Tyler, still riding high on their shared joke, dismissed it with a wave. "Come on, it is not that serious. Everyone uses family when they can. I would like you both to leave now." I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Tyler scoffed, clearly not taking me seriously. Do not be dramatic. You will get over it by tomorrow and help us with the down payment. You always do. Please leave, I repeated, standing up from the table. Now, as they gathered their things, seemingly more annoyed than concerned about my reaction, Sarah paused at the door. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of regret cross her face. But then Tyler placed his hand on her shoulder, and whatever moment of clarity she might have had vanished as they walked out, still chuckling about their clever long-term scheme. I closed the door behind them and leaned against its legs, finally giving way as I slid to the floor. The apartment felt oppressively quiet after they left. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying years of interactions, recontextualizing them with this new painful knowledge. That night, sleep eluded me completely. Instead, I meticulously reviewed bank statements and credit card records, calculating the full extent of my financial support. The total exceeded $45,000 over just 18 months, not including countless smaller expenses and gifts. The sheer magnitude of the deception left me breathless. By morning, a strange calm had replaced my initial shock. With clarity I had not felt in years regarding Sarah and Tyler, I began formulating a plan. First, I consulted my financial advisor about any legal obligations I might have regarding ongoing commitments. Then I spoke with a lawyer friend about establishing clear boundaries going forward. By afternoon, I had created a comprehensive strategy to extricate myself from their financial lives completely and immediately. I composed a formal email documenting my decision and the reasons behind it, keeping the language factual and unemotional despite the betrayal burning in my chest. I detailed each instance of manipulation they had freely admitted to during dinner, making it clear this was not a temporary reaction, but a permanent boundary. After sending it, I immediately called the credit card company to cancel the emergency card I had given Sarah, which had a $10,000 limit. Next, I contacted their landlord, with whom I had established a relationship, explaining I would no longer be guaranteeing their rent payments. Finally, I transferred the remaining funds I had mentally allocated for their future requests into a secured account with conditions that would only release money for verified emergencies or education expenses after thorough verification. With each action, I felt both a piercing grief for the relationship I thought we had and a strengthening resolve to protect myself from further exploitation. The hardest part was acknowledging that the sister I thought I knew might never have existed at all. The reaction was swift and predictable. First came anger text messages filled with accusations of abandonment and cruelty. When that generated no response, they switched to guilt, invoking our parents and what they would have wanted. Next came threats to tell family members about my abusive control over them. Finally, as their financial situation deteriorated, desperate pleas and promises to change filled my voicemail. I maintained complete silence, the only language I now trusted between us. As promised, Sarah and Tyler involved extended family in their campaign. Distant cousins and our grandmother called, expressing concern about the family rift. They had been told a version of events that cast me as suddenly withdrawing support out of pettiness over minor disagreements. To each concerned relative, I calmly explained what had happened, including direct quotes from Sarah and Tyler's own admissions. Some believed me immediately, having witnessed similar patterns themselves. Others required more convincing, which I provided through documented evidence of the financial support and subsequent manipulation. The family divided into camps. Some supported my decision to establish boundaries, recognizing it as necessary for both my well-being and Sarah's eventual growth. Others maintained that family obligation transcended all else, regardless of how that relationship functioned. This split was mirrored among our mutual friends, with loyalties tested and some friendships permanently altered. Through it all, I held firm to my decision despite sleepless nights filled with doubt. Was I being too harsh? Should I have offered one more chance? Had I failed in my promise to our parents? These questions haunted me, but each time I revisited the memory of their laughter at my expense, my resolve strengthened again. The consequences for Sarah and Tyler mounted quickly. 3 months after I stopped covering their rent, they received an eviction notice. Shortly after, their car was repossessed when payments stopped. Tyler faced with actual financial ruin rather than the fabricated kind he had used to manipulate me. finally took a retail job well below his qualifications. Sarah returned to the waitressing position she had quit, working double shifts to make up for lost income. They moved from their spacious apartment to a studio in a less desirable neighborhood. Their lavish wedding plans were first downsized, then postponed indefinitely. The entrepreneurial dream business never materialized, nor did the house they had wanted me to help purchase. Reality had finally caught up with them in ways my enabling had previously prevented. For me, the journey was equally transformative, but in different ways. The first few weeks were the hardest, filled with guilt and second-guessing. I started seeing a therapist weekly, working through my codependent tendencies and the roots of my excessive need to care for others at my own expense. I joined a support group specifically for survivors of family financial abuse, surprised to find how common my experience was. As months passed, I began rediscovering parts of myself that had been subsumed by my caretaker role. I resumed rock climbing, a passion I had abandoned when Sarah's needs became all-consuming. I joined a book club, making new friends who knew me only as Jerry, not as Sarah's brother or the family provider. I volunteered teaching financial literacy to high school students, transforming my painful experience into something constructive for others. The most profound changes happened internally. I learned to distinguish between genuine generosity and enabling destructive behavior. I recognized patterns in my own thinking that had made me vulnerable to manipulation, particularly around family obligation. Most importantly, I discovered that I had value beyond what I could provide materially to others, a concept that seemed obvious but had somehow become buried under years of defined purpose as my sister's protector. For 3 months, there was complete silence between Sarah and me. No calls, no texts, no social media interaction. Then one day, a handwritten letter arrived in my mailbox. Unlike the manipulative messages that had preceded it, this letter contained something new: accountability. Sarah wrote about hitting rock bottom after the eviction, about the shame that finally broke through when she had to call our grandmother for a loan to avoid homelessness. She described the painful process of recognizing her own role in destroying our relationship and the entitlement that had grown unchecked within her. Most significantly, she made no requests, no subtle hints for reconciliation or financial assistance. It was simply an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and an expression of remorse. Tyler, on the other hand, continued to place blame externally. According to mutual friends, he maintained that I had overreacted to a little joke and was punishing them excessively for minor transgressions. In his narrative, their financial struggles were entirely my fault for pulling the rug out without warning. This divergence in accountability created a new tension in their relationship, one that Sarah mentioned briefly in subsequent communications. Our reconciliation began tentatively with coffee at a neutral location. I made it clear from the outset that financial support was off the table indefinitely. If our relationship was to rebuild, it would have to be based on mutual respect and genuine connection, not transaction. Sarah agreed, seeming to understand the gravity of rebuilding broken trust. The first few meetings were awkward, filled with careful conversation that avoided both the past and any mention of their financial situation. Gradually, authentic moments began to emerge. Sarah shared her genuine struggles adjusting to their reduced circumstances, but also the unexpected pride she felt in supporting herself. I spoke about my therapy journey and the painful realizations it had prompted about our family dynamics even before our parents' death. Some family relationships were permanently altered by the rift. Certain relatives who had sided strongly with Sarah initially never fully accepted my version of events, creating a lingering tension at family gatherings. Others who had seen the pattern developing long before I did formed stronger bonds with me, offering support and validation during the difficult transition. Most surprisingly, Sarah showed genuine growth through consistent actions over time. She worked multiple jobs to repay debts they had accumulated, including a small amount to our grandmother. She began community college courses in the evenings, pursuing a practical degree in accounting. When Tyler eventually left her unable to adjust to their new financial reality and her unwillingness to attempt manipulating me again, she faced that additional hardship with a resilience I had never seen in her before. Looking back now, 2 years after that devastating dinner revelation, I understand that sometimes the hardest lesson is learning that giving someone everything they want is not the same as giving them what they need. Real love means caring enough to let people face the consequences of their choices, even when it breaks your heart to watch. By cutting off the financial support that had become a crutch, I ultimately gave Sarah the opportunity to discover her own strength, something far more valuable than money could ever be. Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do for someone is to stop protecting them from reality. In my case, that painful choice led not only to personal healing but also created space for my sister to become the capable, independent adult she was always meant to be. Our relationship now, though different, has a foundation of truth and respect that was missing before. And for that unexpected gift, despite all the pain it took to get here, I am genuinely grateful. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have cut them off immediately or tried a different approach? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about family dynamics and personal growth. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately lead to healing for everyone involved. Share this video if you know someone who might need to hear this message today.